Controversial. That's one of the first words people tend to think of when Craig Bellamy is mentioned. The Welshman had a superb career at plenty of big clubs, but no matter where he went, controversy never seemed far away. Bellamy made his professional debut aged just 17 for Norwich City back in 1996. By this point, he'd already found himself in trouble with the club. Once, I got involved in a fight outside the Norwich training ground with a trialist, recalled Bellamy. It didn't go too well for that kid. He was a goalkeeper and I broke his arm. I felt embarrassed about it afterwards, and Norwich warned me that if anything like that happened again, I was gone. The young attacker kicked on from there and impressed in the following few years in the second tier of English football, making 91 appearances for Norwich and scoring 34 goals. These performances caught the eye of Coventry City manager Gordon Strachan. The then Premier League club broke their transfer fee record to sign 21-year-old Bellamy for £6 million. Things didn't start well, but improved when Coventry signed fellow Welshman John Hartson to pair up top with Bellamy halfway through the season. Overall, in his year at Coventry, Bellamy netted 8 goals in 39 appearances and suffered relegation from the top tier at the end of the season. He found little joy throughout the spell. I never once enjoyed it at Coventry. I felt quite demoralised. I had enjoyed myself so much at Norwich, but I found I had taken a backward step. In the summer of 2001, Bellamy completed a £6.5 million move to Bobby Robson's Newcastle. Robson had long since been an admirer of Bellamy and even tried to bring him to St James's Park the previous year before the move to Coventry, describing him as a great player wrapped around an unusual and volatile character. Things started well at his new club, with Bellamy netting 14 goals in 39 appearances throughout his first season at Newcastle. He formed a productive partnership up top with Alan Shearer and flourished in a Newcastle side also containing the likes of Shay Given, Norberto Solano, Jermaine Jenas, Kieran Dyer, Gary Speed and Laurent Robert. They finished in the top 4, earning a place in the Champions League qualifiers. In that debut season, Bellamy experienced the first of his controversies at Newcastle. During a winter training camp in Spain, Bellamy, along with Kieran Dyer and a few other teammates, missed a dinner for club chairman John Hall and instead got drunk at the hotel bar. Despite claiming they were unaware the dinner was being held for the chairman, the players involved were sent home early from the trip and received unfavourable press in the following days. Also during that debut season, Bellamy found himself cautioned by the police for common assault. This was in February of 2002, and the Welshman was accused of throwing a 20-year-old female student out of a car. Bellamy denied the accusations and claimed the woman had slammed a car door on his leg. Though today this would probably be a much bigger story, Newcastle dealt with the issue internally at the time, and nothing further legally came from the incident. The 2002-2003 season was another strong showing from Newcastle, as they finished third in the league, though Bellamy's form dipped somewhat and he missed the latter stages of the season with a knee injury. Before that, Bellamy made his Champions League debut, and once again, it ended in controversy. In a November 2002 group stage game in Ukraine, Newcastle lost 2-0 to Dynamo Kiev. Though he received no punishment for the incident during the match, Bellamy would receive a 3-game European suspension after headbutting a Kiev defender in the dying stages of the game. Since the referee did not see the incident, the decision was rendered on the basis of video evidence. Bellamy would return in time for the final group game, where Newcastle travelled to Rotterdam to take on Feyenoord. Bellamy netted a double, including a 90th minute winner, which sent Newcastle into the next round. In those days, the next round of the Champions League was a second group stage. In the opening game, Newcastle hosted Inter Milan, and once more, Bellamy made headlines for the wrong reasons, as he received the fastest red card in the competition's history when he was sent off for swinging an arm at opposition defender Marco Materazzi just 5 minutes into the game. The headlines went from bad to worse, as Bellamy was accused of using racist language to a stranger outside a Cardiff nightclub in March 2003. Bellamy initially faced one charge of using words or behaviour likely to cause racially aggravated harassment, alarm or distress, and a further 2 charges of racially aggravated intentional harassment. The charges were later dropped, but Bellamy was convicted of using foul and abusive language and fined £750. A few months later, Bellamy angered then Newcastle chairman Freddie Shepherd. Bellamy delayed a knee operation in order to play for Wales in Euro 2004 qualifiers, which caused him to miss several games for Newcastle. This all led to Shepherd trying to prevent Bellamy from being allowed to play for Wales, even going so far as to threaten legal action against the Football Association of Wales. Further bust-ups with club staff ensued, including a claim that Bellamy threw a chair at first-team coach John Carver. Bellamy would go on to praise Bobby Robson's handling of the incidents, as Robson brought Bellamy back into the fold to help the team. Early on in the 2004-2005 season, Bobby Robson departed as Newcastle manager. His replacement was Graeme Souness, and pretty much immediately, Bellamy clashed with the Scotsman. Their first bust-up came when Bellamy was substituted during a 1-1 draw with Charlton in October 2004, where Bellamy had scored Newcastle's goal. This was soon followed up on the training ground in the following days, with the pair needing to be pulled apart. Souness would tell the press, "I don't have to go into or explain my reason for substituting him. He's a cracking little player with a genuine desire to do well in the game, but he has to learn the rules you have to adhere by." Though the duo would both say they'd patched things up, Bellamy found himself omitted from the squad for a January 2005 league clash with Arsenal. Souness initially claimed it was because of a hamstring injury, but quickly changed the story to say Bellamy refused to play in a right midfield role. Bellamy quickly fired back to deny this and accused Souness of lying, saying he was happy to play in any position. It was fast becoming apparent that they were incapable of coexisting. Souness responded by stating that Bellamy would never play for Newcastle again while he was manager, and the club fined Bellamy 2 weeks' wages. Club chairman Freddie Shepherd had been trying to make peace between the pair in the lead up to this, but now sided with Souness, accusing the striker of cheating Newcastle. "He's like a boxer throwing a fight," said Shepherd, and added that Bellamy's behaviour was totally unacceptable and totally unprofessional. His time at the club was over. The Steve Bruce managed Birmingham City offered £6 million for Bellamy, but the Welshman's move of choice was not to another club in England. Instead, Bellamy signed for Celtic on loan for the remainder of the season on the 31st of January 2005. Entangled in a title challenge with rivals Rangers, this was a huge coup for Martin O'Neill's side, and the move allowed Bellamy to once again link up with Welsh international teammate John Hartson up top. Celtic had inevitably struggled to replace Henrik Larsson when he departed the previous summer, and Henri Camara on loan in the first half of the season failed to provide sufficient firepower. But Bellamy reinvigorated a Celtic side who were, in truth, ageing and slowing down following a golden period under O'Neill. Bellamy immediately injected pace and tenacity into the team and was embraced by the Celtic fan base with open arms, something he really needed at the time. Bellamy would thrive in Scotland, scoring 9 goals in 15 appearances. However, he did have the misfortune of being part of the Celtic team to lose the league title in the final minutes of the last game of the season against Motherwell. A week later, Bellamy did manage to win the first silverware of his career, playing 90 minutes in Celtic's 1-0 victory over Dundee United in the Scottish Cup final. Compared to the rest of his career to this point, Bellamy's time at Parkhead was largely controversy-free. After scoring a sensational solo goal in a 2-1 win over Rangers at Ibrox, he was booked for silently celebrating too close to Rangers fans, a ridiculous decision from referee Stuart Dougal. But other than that, it was a harmonious time for the Welshman. Celtic fans clamoured for his loan spell to be made permanent, but the truth was that by this time, Peter Lawwell had cut spending massively at Celtic, and Bellamy's wages made the transfer a no-goer. Martin O'Neill left Celtic at the end of the season, and new manager Gordon Strachan would have had to essentially spend his entire budget on Bellamy instead of reinvigorating the squad with several new signings that the team badly needed.
Others want a piece of the former Celtic star Craig Bellamy, and he's happy to oblige.
Give me quick words.
Well, fairly happy.
Scotland, say this one.
I can't sign Rangers, please.
Oh, come on.
I can't, no chance.
no deal was struck, and in the end, Bellamy instead completed a move to Blackburn Rovers in the summer of 2005 for £6 million. Bellamy was on the brink of a move to David Moyes' Everton initially, but backed out at the last minute, describing Moyes as tense and hostile. At Blackburn, he would be reunited with his former Wales national team boss Mark Hughes, who knew how to get the best out of Bellamy. He really thrived during the season at Blackburn, scoring 17 goals in 32 appearances. Hughes was prepared to build the team around Bellamy and give him the captain's armband the following season, but it wasn't to be. Liverpool, the team Bellamy supported as a boy, stepped in and triggered a clause in Bellamy's contract which allowed him to speak to any club who offered £6 million before the 30th of June 2006. Blackburn offered Bellamy a new deal and desperately wanted him to stay, but Bellamy described the opportunity to move to Anfield as a dream and even took a wage cut to complete the transfer. Things started off well, however it wasn't long before Bellamy once again found himself embroiled in off-field controversy. Liverpool held a training camp in Portugal ahead of a February 2007 Champions League clash with Barcelona. It wasn't on the pitch or the training ground where things began. Instead, it was on the golf course. Me, Robbie Fowler, John Arnorisa and Steve Finnan were playing golf, and I questioned some of Risa's shots. I felt there were certain areas where I thought it went somewhere, but it ended up in a much better position. It wound me up a little, and I said to Finnan, he's cheating. During the night, we had a few drinks and there was karaoke. Risa had to sing a song as there was a Christmas do and he didn't turn up. He said he was going back to Norway and he didn't, so it was part of his punishment to sing a song and pay a fine. I said to him, you've got to sing, but he was dead against it, and I seemed to push it more then, like no, you have to, and I went back and forth, and he said, look, I ain't singing and stop trying to make me. I took offence, and I'm with Sammy Hubia and I'm getting more and more unhappy about it. He's gone back to his room and I'm thinking, I'm not accepting that. Then I started remembering all the little petty moments in training where he elbowed me and thinking it had been going on for a while. Finnan and me were sharing rooms, and when we got back I've said, I'm not having this, where's his room? Upon finding out Risa's room number, Bellamy arrived at the door with an 8-iron in his hand. Bellamy continued, people think I've smacked him across the head, but I smacked him across the legs and then he got into the corner and got sheets around him. The two agreed to settle things with their fists the next morning instead, but no fistfight ever occurred. Bellamy instead apologised to Risa and was fined 2 weeks' wages by the club. The story doesn't end there. At the new camp, Bellamy and Risa were incredibly the two goal scorers for the visitors as Liverpool recorded a 2-1 win over Barcelona. Following his goal, Bellamy would infamously celebrate by simulating a golf stroke. In subsequent years, Risa has said he can forgive the incident, but will never forget it. Liverpool would make it to the 2007 Champions League final, though to Bellamy's frustration, he found himself an unused sub in the game. At 2-0 down, manager Rafa Benitez opted to bring on a defender as his final substitute, which infuriated Bellamy. On the flight home after the match, Benitez sat next to Bellamy, and the Spanish coach confirmed the club were looking to bring in new attackers in the summer, saying, if you feel there's an opportunity for you to go to another club, speak to your agent, you're able to go and explore that. In the 2007 summer transfer window that followed, Bellamy completed a £7.5 million move to West Ham, which was a club record fee at the time. His time at Upton Park was largely blighted by injuries, making just 26 appearances during 18 months at the club, scoring 9 goals. Despite the issues with fitness and personal problems including homesickness, Bellamy looked back fondly on his time at West Ham. The West Ham fans get a bad rap, but they were brilliant. They're the most knowledgeable fans of all of them I ever played for. You couldn't kid them. In the January 2009 transfer window, Bellamy would move on from London. A bidding war broke out between Harry Redknapp's Tottenham and Mark Hughes' Man City. It took a fee of around £14 million for City to get the deal done, but this was shortly after their takeover, so they were prepared to splash big money at the time. Once again, Bellamy found himself reunited with Mark Hughes. Despite all the big spending, Man City struggled throughout the second half of the campaign, something Bellamy attributed to divides in the locker room. Bellamy particularly clashed with the Brazilian clique at Man City, which included players such as the recently arrived Robinho, who it is said initially mistakenly believed he was joining Manchester United, as well as the likes of Elano and Joe. Soon after arriving, Bellamy had a training ground bust-up with the Brazilians, accusing them of not training hard and not caring about the cause. Bellamy has called Robinho the most problematic player he ever worked with, saying, "The one player, and I quite liked him as a person at times, was Robinho. With all the ability he had, which was astonishing, he just let me down. I just felt he was such a top player, but the feeling I had was he was too big for Man City at that time, and us players who were there with him were lucky to be with him. That was a real disappointment for me." Robinho has since fired back. "I had a fight with him once, but then who at City didn't? Some other players had problems with Bellamy too. He was very explosive. In one game we played against Arsenal, I didn't have a great first half, so he started yelling at me in English when we got back to the dressing room at half time. I didn't understand it, but from the little I could work out, I could tell he wasn't saying nice things. My teammates helped me by pushing him away, and he quickly calmed down. I had just come back from a marathon of a journey to play for Brazil, and I was feeling very tired, but it was okay, and he came to me the next day and asked me to forgive him." One of Bellamy's finest performances for City came in a Manchester derby game in September 2009. Bellamy scored a double, including a 90th minute stunner to make the score 3-3, where he tore Rio Ferdinand apart with devastating pace. However, referee Martin Atkinson played on until the 97th minute, where Michael Owen popped up with a winning goal for the home side. City manager Mark Hughes was infuriated at the decision to add on so much time. United faced disciplinary action following incidents of their supporters throwing objects at Bellamy during the game, including a coin that struck him on the back of the head and multiple bottles. Mark Hughes was sacked as Man City manager in December 2009 and replaced by Roberto Mancini. One of Mancini's first decisions as City manager was to introduce double training sessions to try to increase the fitness of the squad, but Bellamy struggled with these due to the multiple injuries he had now incurred over the years. In February 2010, Bellamy yet again found himself in trouble following a night out. I went out in Manchester with Wayne Bridge and Sean Wright-Phillips, and at the end of the night, I allowed myself to get into a scrape with a United fan. It was a bit of pushing and shoving. There was a group of United fans waiting for me as I went to get into my car. They were taunting me, and because I was in a bad frame of mind, I got involved. It was nothing serious, but it was serious enough that I aggravated my knee injury in the fracas. I was out for 2 weeks because of that. I came back to training and I did some running. Roberto said I would be running the next day too. I said I couldn't do 2 days solid in a row. He said I'd been off for 2 weeks and I had to, but I told him I couldn't. I had to stick to my programme. He called me into his office for a meeting with him, his fitness coach and the club doctor. He was confrontational from the start. "Is it okay for you to be out for 2 weeks and then think you can decide what you're doing?" he said. "I'm sticking to my programme, that's all," I replied. "It's kept me fit all season and I don't want to risk being injured now." "Okay then, you've been away for 2 weeks," he said. "Now you can go home for the rest of the season. Go on." "What are you on about?" I asked. "Well, you didn't want to train." "It's not that I don't want to train," I told him. "I know my knee. I know it will react tomorrow if I train again, and if it doesn't, my hamstrings will." No, Mancini yelled. So I went home. I told Brian Marwood and Gary Cook what had happened. Gary came round to my house to talk about it. He said something had been lost in translation. I went in the next day and trained, but Roberto and I didn't speak after that. Despite his strained relationship with Mancini, Bellamy made 40 appearances for City throughout the 2009-10 season, scoring 11 goals. In the summer of 2011, Bellamy was omitted from both Man City's Premier League and Europa League squads, so another move was on the cards. City were reluctant to sell Bellamy to a Premier League rival, which alerted Celtic manager Neil Lennon, who tried desperately to get the club to put together a deal to bring Bellamy back to Glasgow. However, in the end, Bellamy completed a different dream move back to Wales to join Championship side Cardiff City on loan for the season. By this point, Bellamy was 31. Still relatively young, however his frequent injuries and lifestyle choices were beginning to catch up with him a little. He realised this and even brought his own personal fitness coach with him to Cardiff. He was an inspiring figure for Cardiff throughout the season as they pushed for promotion, but eventually fell to Reading in the playoffs. In the summer of 2011, Bellamy reached an agreement with Man City to end his contract a year early, which meant he was a free agent. In somewhat of a surprising turn of events, Bellamy landed a return to Anfield, as Kenny Dalglish moved to bring him back to Liverpool. Bellamy said, "I've grown up with Kenny Dalglish, now to be signed by him is a massive honour." Bellamy was largely a bit part player for Liverpool during the 2011-12 season. As fate would have it, Liverpool came up against Cardiff City in the 2012 League Cup final. Bellamy came off the bench in the 58th minute with Liverpool trailing 1-0, and just 2 minutes later the scoreline was level. Liverpool eventually won the game on penalties, with Bellamy asking to be omitted from the list of spot kick takers. Bellamy's final appearance for the club was the 2012 FA Cup final against Chelsea. He started the game, but couldn't prevent Liverpool from losing 2-1. Perhaps the most emotional moment of Bellamy's career occurred during a League Cup quarter-final game that season, also against Chelsea. This was just 2 days after the tragic death of Bellamy's friend and former teammate Gary Speed. Bellamy wept as the teams lined up pre-match and fans chanted Gary Speed's name.
Before we get underway, there will be a minute's remembrance of the life of the Welsh manager Gary Speed, a man totally respected throughout football. Craig Bellamy, who lost a dear friend and mentor at the weekend, and football also lost a truly great man. The emotion of the occasion, too much for the Welsh international. Now he must focus himself on the task at hand for Liverpool, which is to reach the last four of the League Cup.
After this, Bellamy returned to Cardiff City in the summer of 2012. New Liverpool manager Brendan Rodgers had offered Bellamy the chance to stay, but the loss of Gary Speed and end of his marriage saw Bellamy keen to return home. Once again, Bellamy was a motivational figure for the Bluebirds, and against the odds, they managed to win the championship and earn promotion to the Premier League, their first time back in the top flight of English football for over half a century. Bellamy called it his greatest achievement. Cardiff's season in the Premier League was to be the last of Craig Bellamy's playing career. The Welsh side finished bottom of the table, and time had caught up with the once lightning-quick striker. I guess over the years I've become accustomed to the pain from various injuries, but for the last 3 to 4 years I've been on anti-inflammatories every game. I'm not sure my body will think that's a wise thing in due course, but it kept me playing for that period. However, the time has come to stand aside and say enough. My body can't take any more. Bellamy officially retired from professional football on the 22nd of May 2014. Remembered as a legend of Welsh football, Bellamy technically represented two nations at international level. He was selected as part of the Great Britain squad for the 2012 Summer Olympics, though it was obvious his heart always belonged to Wales, as Bellamy and his fellow Welshmen in the squad refused to sing God Save the Queen, the pre-game anthem for the team. I wasn't going to sing the national anthem, and nor was any other Welsh player. It's not our anthem. I sing one anthem, and that's that. That's my country's anthem. I'm not being anti-English or anti-British. You have to remember that we took some stick in Wales just for playing for Team GB. Bellamy scored in the opening game during a 1-1 draw with Senegal, though GB were knocked out in the quarter-finals by South Korea. Craig Bellamy made his debut for the Welsh national team in 1998, aged just 18 years old. Coming just before the golden generation that included the likes of Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey hitting their prime, Bellamy tragically never had the opportunity to represent his country at a major international tournament. In total, Bellamy earned 78 caps for Wales, scoring 19 goals. As this video has shown, Craig Bellamy was a superb player who was never far away from controversy. He played for plenty of top clubs and had a superb career. He was a genuinely elite talent in his prime, but there's still that small bit of doubt that if he'd had better luck with injuries or had been able to control his temperament and stay out of trouble, things could have been even better. His life in football continues today, and he's currently manager of the Wales national team. Bellamy himself summed up his own career best. "When I look back, I'm beyond proud. I honestly believe I got the most out of everything I had. I feel my dedication, my attitude, I couldn't have asked for more, and that's the honest truth. I'm so grateful I had it."